the funny thing was I was not 100. I was like 98%, but with that still like I don't have that kickstart to join. And the guy, the basically the staff NCOIC of the recruiting office, he's like, so do you want to join the Marine Corps? And I'm like, yeah, I think, probably. I'm going to take a little bit of time to like, he's like, no, do you want to join the Marine Corps? And I was like, yes.
Welcome to How I Embraced the Suck, a podcast where you get to hear from veterans what life in the military is really like. I am your host, Walt, and before we start, you should know that I do not censor the show in any way. You have been warned. All right, so today we have with us Judah, a Marine who has occasionally been known by the name Pogue Actual. Judah, what's up?
What's up? What's going on?
Cool. Glad you could be on the podcast here. Kind of tell folks your story and your experiences in the military. Give us an overview of your time in the service to date.
Well, so I joined June 25th, 2019. I was 17 years old. Had just gotten kicked out of high school, actually, about 6 months earlier. Was working at a Little Caesars. I was the assistant manager, so I thought I was going places in life. But I knew I didn't want to go to college. It was a weird point in my life. Gotten kicked out of high school. Didn't have a degree. Or diploma. Sorry. Definitely didn't have a degree.
Well, you didn't have a degree either.
Yeah, definitely didn't have a degree. Didn't even have a diploma. I was good at like working, right? Because like I picked up assistant manager pretty quick. I was still 17, so it was like obviously I'm not like super lazy, but I didn't want to work at Little Caesars for the rest of my life. I knew that, like that's not where I wanted to be, because there were 30 and 40-year-olds still working there, and I was like, that's not gonna be me.
Yeah.
So I sent out some applications to a few like retail stores. I'm like, listen, I'll just climb the ladder the old-fashioned way, pull myself up by the bootstraps, one position at a time. I'll get to the top. Sent out some applications, and by which I mean like two to like Target and like some warehouse. Got no response. Probably mostly due to the fact that I wasn't 18 yet. Like I think a lot of it was just they were like,
Sure.
Still 17, and I didn't have a high school diploma to attach to it, so that probably didn't help me either. Like nowadays
Right.
it's just like assumed like you gotta have a high school diploma to get a job, which is ridiculous. It's utterly asinine, but whatever. So I was like, well, crap, there goes that plan, right? Because I sent out 2 whole applications and nobody wanted me. Couple recruiters came in. It was like 11 at night. I was cleaning up the store after we'd already closed, but I hadn't locked the doors. So they walked in and they were like, hey, you wanna join the Marine Corps? Said some real nice, flattering things about me. And I was like, sure, why not? Never heard of the Marine Corps up to that point. Like I knew they were military, clearly. I mean, they're recruiters. They're in their Bravos, like
Sure.
But they were like, but I didn't know what the Marine Corps was. I didn't understand the 5 branches of service or any of that. So they were like literally probably if the Air Force or the Navy or the Army or the Coast Guard had walked in and well, okay, maybe not, because they don't really have as pretty of uniforms, and I was like, those are some cool uniforms. But it wasn't like, oh yeah, I wanted to, thought about joining and I want to join the Marine Corps because they're like the coolest and the hardest and whatever. Like no, they just happened to be the ones that talked to me. Got lucky there, I guess. They were like, okay, cool, you want to come do a full interview with us? Once I said like, oh yeah, it sounds like something fun. I'm like, yeah, and they're like, when can you do that? I'm like, tomorrow. They're like, you don't have school or nothing? I'm like, dude, no. I don't have anything. Literally the only thing in my life right now is work, and I make my own hours, so I can, go do it tomorrow whenever you want. So I went in there. They did their whole recruiting shebang. By that point, and this is how like, kind of like just lost in the sauce I was, I guess, with my life at that point. I'd already decided, like, yeah, I'm going to do this. Like, the whole thing was just, like, going through the motions for me. I was like, yeah, sure, whatever, cool. Talked to him a little bit.
Easiest sell they had.
Yeah, probably. Recruiting is tough. Like, I have friends that have gone through recruiting or who left to go do recruiting who I still talk to, and just know some recruiters. And recruiting is tough. Like, I'm sure at some point somebody's talked about how hard it is to be a drill instructor, and I know many people who firmly believe that recruiting is harder. You work ridiculous
Hmm.
hours. Sometimes your office is 3 hours away from your house, like, and you just don't ever see your family. Like, recruiting is tough. People don't want to join today.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just not worth it for most people. So, like, yeah, probably one of the easiest sells they had like that month, if not the easiest. So they're like, all right, we'll come back in tomorrow. We'll do like this practice ASVAB to kind of gauge where you're going to be at with your actual ASVAB. We'll get started on your paperwork. The funny thing was, I was not 100. I was like 98%, but with that still, like, I don't have that kickstart to join. And the guy, the basically the staff NCOIC of the recruiting office, he's like, so do you want to join the Marine Corps? And I'm like, yeah, I think, probably. I'm gonna take a little bit of time to, like. He's like, no, do you want to join the Marine Corps? And I was like, yes. Sure. And he's like, that's yes, sir. And I was like, I ain't in yet, buddy, but whatever. So, came back the next day, took the test, did pretty well. They're like, all right, when do you want to go? And I'm like, dude, if you could send me tomorrow, I'd say tomorrow. Like, I'm just, like, at that point, I didn't want to deal with my parents. I was like, the best way to not have to listen to anybody is to join the Marine Corps. And then my parents can't tell me what to do, like. Young dumb kid, just want to get out of the house. Didn't have my high school diploma, which actually ended up being a little bit of a hiccup because I was like, because when he asked me about it, I was like, nah, I don't have it. I got kicked out, dude. I'll just take the GED. And it's like, you don't want to do that. You want your diploma. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, dude. It turns out I actually had enough credits to graduate because the co-op that we were doing,
Right.
a lot of the junior high stuff that you do counts as high school credits. So had enough credits to graduate. So, I was already homeschooled technically and mostly. And so they just, were like, all right, here's your diploma. Cause they're, like, had the credits and they were able to write it up. So got my diploma. Didn't plan on it, but I ended up with it. And they were like, all right, we can send you in like 5 weeks or so. I left within 2 months of meeting my recruiters for the first time, still having zero clue about the Marine Corps. There was actually one point about 3 weeks after I met him that they were like, hey, you can go today. You just take this kid's contract. He was going to be in 03, and I was like, yes. Because that's what I wanted to do. And they're
03, 03 is what?
it's
for the listener?
infantry. So, like,
Okay.
grunts. They get to go kill people and do cool stuff and
Yeah.
hump all over the place. Much, much, much cooler than what I do. And so I was saying my goodbyes, and then it turned out, so my parents, somewhere along the line, my birth certificate got lost. I don't know who actually lost it or what happened with it, but it got lost. So I had to order a new one. Took about 2 weeks to come in, and it was not there yet. So that was the only reason I didn't leave then, which coincidentally, if I had left then, I almost certainly would not have ended up in Quantico doing a job that I hate. Like, like, I hate being in Quantico. I'm non-deployable. Like, being in Quantico is essentially a death sentence for your career. Like, even if you wanted to stay in, which their retention rate is like less than 1%. It is. It is abysmal here because it's just such a horrible environment. There are people here who, like, right after 9/11 happened, which we're recording this, like, just a couple days after the 20th anniversary. Right after 9/11 happened, they were saying, we want volunteers to go, like, get boots on the ground there. And one of my officers, my chief warrant officer, he was one of the first people. He was one of the first, like, 10 people to go down there and sign their name, like, hey, I want to go. Never got the call. They didn't want to send him. Had a great record. Exemplary Marine. To this day is like, I mean, most of the people walking around Quantico 3, 4, 5, 6 ribbons maybe. This dude just fat stack. Like, never got sent. Went down and tried to go again. Nothing. Quantico, you are non-deployable.
They just didn't want to lose him.
It's one of,
from where he was.
So people get so frustrated about this. Everybody teases reservists right up until they get out of schoolhouse, and then the reservists get to go home, and you have to go, somewhere else and do some dumb crap. And the reservists then get to go home for 6 months, and then they deploy and go do cool stuff, and then they come back home, and then they deploy again and do cool stuff. And the reservists literally get everything. They get, nice gear, and they get, all the fun deployments. Like, because when you're a part of the machine can't spare you, right? Like, the infrastructure that,
Right.
like, especially here in Quantico. Everybody here in Quantico, except for a couple like the CRT team, crisis response team, or
Hmm.
SRT, I think. Anyway, there's like one team that's part of
The
the MSG
DRT,
program, that
donut
they
response team.
do have one of those. Um, so they
They can
once you
deploy.
once yeah, well they
Yeah,
get dropped into
they're
like
eligible.
they get sent out. They go do their thing. They get dropped into like if an embassy's under attack, they would be
Oh,
sent to
sure.
go. So they're part of the MSG program, which is the Marine Security Guards. They're the guys. They're the Marines that are on station on the embassies protecting. They're actually there for the classified data, not the actual like ambassador or American citizens. That's all CIA contractors.
Sure.
They're there for any classified information, and that's actually part of their procedures. I know most of this because I was going to be on MSG for a while at one point,
Okay.
which we'll get to. Anyway, they're deployable. Nobody else is. Because once you're like, if you have a machine, right, and you have this machine in operation, you can't just pull a random part out of that machine and expect it to still keep operating
Sure.
correctly,
Yeah.
right? So when you're a an active duty status, like part of the Marine Corps, or I'm sure it's the same in all the branches, right? They can't pull you out of whatever you're doing to support the basic infrastructure, that the basic skeleton that
Hmm.
holds the service together, to go do something else. So unless you're actively part of like one of the specific units that's supposed to do that, or a reservist, you're basically working a 9 to 5 where you have to shave, cut your hair, and wear a certain set of clothes. And it's 10 times worse in Quantico. You work around. I have been surrounded by civilians the entire time I'm here. Like the civilian to Marine ratio when it comes to the workforce on Quantico is 1 to 1 at best.
Hmm.
I work around more civilians than Marines. And the worst part is a lot of these civilians are former Marines, so they know that they can treat the Marines like crap to make themselves look good. And there's a huge amount of like
Mm.
politicism and careerism going on for these people. They can
Sure.
make some serious money if they advance high enough. So I've had leadership that was civilian, former Marine. They know like the issues of being in. A lot of them were Marines on Quantico, so they already understand how much it like is just garbage. You don't. It doesn't even suck for a purpose. It just sucks to suck. Um, they
Do you
will.
embrace it?
Uh, I wonder when that was gonna happen. Anyway, they don't even you would assume they would understand, but they're more than willing to step on you to get themselves a little higher, get their fingers a little deeper in the cookie jar. So like anyway, so point being, Quantico, you do not get to deploy. You don't get to do anything fun. And I completely forget where I was.
Well, yeah. So it sounds like, I mean, kind of, you're saying as a Marine, your career kind of flatlines if you're at Quantico.
Yes.
But for the civilians, there's opportunity to grow.
Yes, because as a
if they're
Marine,
there.
right? And this is not as true anymore, but used to be and for a lot of Marines still, you join the Marine Corps because you want to do Marine Corps crap. Like you want to go shoot at people, you want to get shot at, you want to get, you want to go through a lot of the suck, right? You want to have to deal with all that crap. The essence of Quantico is the opposite of that. It is politics, and it is infrastructure, and it is everything that I hate in life. Like, it's like all of the worst things that you can have all just bundled up into this one soggy mess of horribleness.
You're so essential to maintaining the bureaucracy that they can't spare you to do the actual job of the bureaucracy.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And
cool.
So like you'll see it in the news a lot right now. Like top generals making political statements, or weighing in on things that are very political in nature. They're not out there like commanding a force and being like, this is how we're going to do X, Y, and Z. They're in there making policy, working with policy directors, talking about like $1 billion contracts and all that political. That is the upper echelon of the military today. You're very close to that in Quantico. It's the headquarters of the Marine Corps. The FBI Training Academy is here. OCS is here, which is where they train the officers. Like there's this really like there's like what was that? You remember the Chi like Lego show, and or like it was like Lego sets, and they had like a little show or whatever. There's like a lot of chi energy here, where you can become very powerful if you're a civilian, right? And you want to climb those ranks.
Okay, sure.
Um,
You lost me with the reference, but you picked me back up when you
all
started
right,
talking about civilians.
1 second, 1 second. I gotta take this. Hey, what's up? All right. Anyways, as I was saying, so it's a great place for civilians to climb the ladder. It is where Marines come to die. Most of the Marines here are either careers that are passing through, careers that are trying to crawl their way up a little bit closer to the
Sure,
top, or
sure.
somebody within their first 2 enlistments that's broken. The Marine Corps isn't willing to kick out for whatever reason, or they just haven't bothered to, and they're just living out the rest of their days here at Quantico, getting to die their Marine Corps death, right? And then you have a few people like me that are first termers and really never had major like issues. Like I've never been like limited duty or anything.
Sure.
But just they needed a body, and I got sent here. So it sucks. But anyway, so shipped to boot camp, had that wonderful experience. During which time I learned that I don't look good bald. And
Was it difficult going into boot camp being a twink?
ouch. Physically no, because everything there is like body weight oriented, right? You don't lift weights, right? You're running, you're doing push-ups, you're doing pull-ups. So if you're light, it's not a big deal.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Being a smaller person, I would have described myself more as lean than a twink.
There. Okay. Fair enough.
Hey, sugar bugger. So that part didn't suck so much. As like, I mean, you miss home. It's way more mental games. It's a mental. Now for some fat people, it might be very very physically difficult. But if you're in reasonable shape, physically, it's very doable. There's a couple of rough parts physically. Crucible. Some of the hikes that get up there in mileage, but for the vast majority of semi-fit or healthy individuals, it's going to be the mental strain, the emotional strain. The whole point is to constantly put you in the state of like stress, and like you never know when something's going to happen. You don't sleep well because something's going to happen. You don't ever feel relaxed.
Right.
The goal is mental agility and mental resiliency and toughness. That's the entire purpose of boot camp for the Marine Corps.
Okay.
So, and yeah, that was an interesting one. I don't think it worked quite correctly on me. Because I kind of came out of there and was like, I guess, so going in, I didn't really have normal social skills. As you can probably attest, because you knew me before the Marine Corps. Definitely a weirdo. And then during boot camp, like it turned me into like a super beta, I guess, for a little while. And then upon arriving in Quantico, like all of my friends were like alphas, and so like kind of started changing my mentality again a little bit. I guess kind of emerged out of my first year in Quantico with more of the mentality I was supposed to have coming out of boot camp. But yeah, boot camp is just not that, like, I mean, everybody has does boot camp, and they do it the same way, and everybody goes to the same thing. It's really not that interesting. It sucks.
Mm-hmm.
You deal with it for 3 months, you're fine. The mothers of America need to stop complaining about it. Went to I went to Camp Pendleton for MCT. That was fun. That was the closest to being a Marine I ever got. Like, it's Marine combat training. So you actually get to shoot M240 Bravos just a little tiny bit. You do more hikes. You live in the field for a week, eat a lot of dirt. I guess the most interesting thing about that is that you have, we didn't have running water when we were out there. Like you had access to a little bit of drinking water, but you couldn't, like, they didn't even have hand sanitizer. So like you come out of the, like, you're out there for a week, you're going to poop, you're going to piss, and you have no way to clean your hands whatsoever, like, unless you want to use your very, very limited amount of drinking water for that. And so, like, lots of dirt in your MREs and stuff. I guess that was kind of interesting.
No wet wipes?
I didn't have any. I don't know. There may have been people with some. I didn't have any. Did MCT. Whole lot of yada, yada, yada. Went to 29 Palms. 29 Palms was fun because my instructor had just gotten off of a MEU, which is a Marine Expeditionary Unit. They go out on boats and sail around and like
Mm-hmm.
posture and saber rattle with China and Russia and all of them. And they'll do like that disaster relief and stuff via the MEUs. They're
Sure.
they're they're kind of they're America's equivalent of the cop car that shows up at your house that was patrolling. Um, and that analogy is more deliberate than you would think. Like the Marine Corps loves to refer to itself as America's 911, right? Emergency, disaster.
Right.
Marine Corps is designed in its essence to be able to just respond quickly. Um, and that's why they're called America's Force and Readiness. That's why it doesn't take a congressional act to deploy the Marine Corps or to use the Marine Corps. It's the president can just go and say like, hey, I want them to go do this, and they'll go do that.
Sure.
That's the whole point of the Marine Corps. So he just got off of MEU, him and his buddy actually, and they were both instructors for our class and another class. Very competitive. And that was as far as like calisthenics and cardio, the best shape I was ever in my life. I was a very, very solid like 140, 150, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it was all muscle, and I could run forever. Lots of sand hills in 29 Palms, and every morning it was like, all right, we're up at like 5:30 maybe. Full camis, assault packs full of rocks, and we're gonna go run. And the biggest people, he'd be like, "Yep, casualty, casualty, casualty. You're carrying them." And always a competition with his buddy's class, right? And
Right.
that was 5 days a week. Came out of there in very good running shape. I was in really good shape coming out of there. Then I got to Quantico. Nobody's really making me PT like crazy anymore, and I got skinny again. And then eventually, a buddy of mine started dragging me to the gym, and I put on like 40 pounds in like 3 months, which sounds utterly insane. But I was living on Pop-Tarts and coffee, so like I started
Yep.
going to the chow hall regularly and drinking protein shakes all the time. So I put on weight fast, like crazy fast, inhumanly fast, and then I plateaued. And I'm unfortunately not superhuman. I don't just keep gaining muscle weight perpetually, which would be nice. But I got to Quantico. Was like super excited, pumped up. I got, all the stuff that's gonna, like I'm ready for my Marine Corps career to begin. I get here and they don't even know where I'm supposed to be going as far as units go. They tried to send me like 3 different places and they all rejected me. Story of my life. And then so they ended up sending me to the base G6, and the base G6 was like, okay, cool. We have this 24/7 watch. You're gonna be the night shift. So my first year here, essentially, I would sit in a chair for 12 hours a night, and without knowing what was going on, my only job was like, hey, if something does go bad, she's fine. If something does go bad, you need to call somebody, wake them up, like so that they can fix the problem. My only job was to be there to call people if something went wrong because I couldn't fix anything. I had no knowledge, no skills, no capabilities,
Right.
and I did that for about a year. And then at the end of this year, they finally took me off a night shift, and they would periodically take me off for like a day or two or a week just to mess with my sleep schedule, so I could never really get fully accustomed to either days or nights. But at least I'm pretty sure it was malicious. Anyway, I came off a night shift, and everybody was looking at me like, like I would sit there all day and be like, dude, I don't know what's going on. And they'd be like, how do you not know what's going on? You're a Lance Corporal, you've been here for over a year. And I'm like, yeah, I was on night shift.
Right.
Nobody taught me anything. What I learned in the schoolhouse applies zero to what we're doing here. This is on y'all, not me. They were still like mind blown that I didn't understand the entire job after having been there for a year. They're like, well, didn't you study for Sec Plus? I'm like, no, nobody told me to do anything. I just showed up to work. I sat in the chair for 12 hours. Like that's what I did. So then I got one day I look in my inbox. I got MSG orders, which I didn't know what they were. I didn't know why they were there. Just was like, dude, I don't know what these are. So I spoke to my NCO. I was like, hey, I don't know what these are. I don't know why they're here. I don't want them. I'm good. Please make them go away. And she was like, okay, I got it. Okay, cool. A week later, I followed up, and I was like, hey, Corporal, did you ever deal with those orders? Did you talk to Staff Sergeant about it? And she was like, yeah, nope, I dealt with them. They're good. You're fine. Don't worry about it. Cool. All right. 3 months later, our mass sergeant's on the watch floor, which is the skiff that I worked in. It's got zipper in it, so no phones, no windows,
Sure.
locking door, all that stuff. He's on the floor and he points at me. He's like, you know you have MSG orders, right? And I'm like, I did not know that, mass sergeant. I was told those went away. And he's like, yeah, you have them. Go look at your MOL. So I go on MOL, which is Marines Online. It's got like a lot of information, including orders and stuff like that. And I look at it, and sure enough, I got MSG orders still. And I read through them more carefully with a little bit more knowledge now, 3 months later. And basically, the gist of the orders is, you're going to go do MSG. These are involuntary orders. If you do not want these orders, you have 2 weeks to let us know. Otherwise, we assume it's a yes. And then yada, yada, yada.
You're reading this 3 months later.
Yeah, 3 months later.
Which is longer than 2 weeks.
If my math is correct. So I was pretty upset. I just found out that my fiance at the time was pregnant, and we were planning on getting married, but you can't be married on the MSG program.
And that's the
Marine
MSG
security guards. They do the embassies. So while the MSG is a really cool program, I was like, no, like I just found out that she's pregnant. I want to get married and deal with all this stuff. I got lots to deal with right now. I do not want to be on MSG. And I told my chain of command basically, like, I'm not doing this. Here's my situation. And they were like, what are you talking about? You can't just like not do it. These are orders. You have to go do it. And there was like this huge like what do they call it? Cognitive dissonance between the two of us, where where I'm like, I'm saying this, and to me this makes sense, and they're saying this, and to them that makes sense, and they just like we weren't even speaking the same language. I was saying I'm not doing it, and they're saying these are orders, you have to do them. So we go round and round and round, and eventually they convinced me to not do them, and I was like, okay, we'll figure it out. So I'm making plans, I'm figuring everything out, and I was like, I came up with a plan. I was like, listen, if I just run a second class PFT, then I'm no longer eligible for the MSG program. And then COVID hit, and they're like, we're not running PFTs this year. And I was like, you're kidding. And then like a week before I went to go, MSG basically came out and was like, if you're on the MSG program, you're going to go ahead and run a PFT. Anyway, so I ran my second class PFT, and I have never had a second class PT event of any kind except for this one. So it wasn't that I was just fat. So I ran this PFT, ran it a second class, never heard anything back about it, right? And I was like, oh, they're gonna send me anyways, crap. I'm like, well, it's a little late to turn back now, so I'm getting ready to go. My last day before I was supposed to report at MSG school, which is here on Quantico, so I was just gonna have somebody drive me over there, drop me off. Packed up my room, everything's like packed and ready to go. I am checking out at headquarters. So, like, when you come to and leave duty stations or any kind of schoolhouse or anything like that, you check in at a bunch of different places. They acknowledge that they have your paperwork and they know who you are and you're there, right? So, and then you check out when you leave. I was checking out a battalion. This is like the last step, right? I'd already checked out security, so I wasn't allowed in most of the buildings on base anymore. And as I'm walking around battalion, the career planner runs up to me and is like, hey, your orders got canceled. I was like, are you kidding me? Literally a few hours before I was getting ready to be driven over to MSG school and dropped off. And I was like, okay, I guess, all right, this is what we're doing now. So I was like, I found my staff NCO who also happened to be at battalion at the time, and I was like, hey, staff sergeant, so my orders got canceled. Can I go take a lunch break? Because I'm like my head's spinning. And he was like, do you already check out security? I'm like, yeah. He's like, no, you need to go check back into security before they like take you off and you can't come into work. And I was like, okay. So I did that, and it was just like back to life as normal. It was so weird, like this huge build up to nothing. This is a really weird experience. But then so after that, I was working. We did a move about a year ago, a reorg, and so my job completely changed from doing data side, McSend side, internet kind of stuff, right? Call it network. to doing the phone side of things. I work with Basetel now, so we
Hmm.
handle base phones in certain it's infrastructure branch. So we also do like long long distance cable runs. So I got into experience.
Hmm.
While my experience started off as like the blandest, most like you don't get to do anything. Now I'm getting to do a lot of
Right.
things, like kind of like on the sunset of my time in the Marine Corps. I'm like doing all the things, which is it's fine. It's interesting, getting to do more. Like I was never terrified of fiber. I didn't like I understood kind of the gist of what fiber was. Like okay, it's fast. You can go a long ways with it. It's light,
Hmm.
glass, and plastic. Okay, cool. Um, little did I know, fiber can kill you if you break it. Was not aware of that. Yes, if you break
Hmm.
fiber, it's very small and very sharp. So you just brush it the wrong way, and it can get under your skin. It can get into your bloodstream. It can get lodged in your heart. If you swallow it, it'll get lodged in your esophagus. It can cause massive problems. If it breaks, tiny little shards, very hard to see. You can burn your retinas if you look into the end of a fiber. I was
Hmm.
not scared of fiber. Now I am terrified, and I refuse to touch it. Like I will work with it, but I don't terminate, which is where you actually have the exposed fibers, and it's really
Right.
dangerous.
Right.
I've watched people work with it, and they are extremely careful. I know people who are trained with it. I was not, and never have been, and probably never will be, because now I am terrified of fiber. Um,
Hmm.
so like, yeah, crazy. I mean, I was never scared of fiber before. Now it's like
Sure.
I used to be scared of breaking fiber, and I'm not anymore. So when I worked on the data side, we never handled fiber. Nobody there ever touched fiber. Um, so there was this attitude of like, don't touch the fiber. If you break the fiber, like everything will go down. Like there was this terror of like breaking the fiber. You didn't want to push it. I mean, you handled it more carefully than you would handle like if you had a small bug that you were trying really hard not to squash. Like I mean that
Right.
was how carefully we were. Like my staff and seal would freak out if we brushed the fiber in the comms closets. So I go to base tel, and they work with fiber all the time, and not only are they super cavalier with the fiber, like what I realized is all that fiber that they'd been freaking out about was the patch cords, which is basically just like short length, like usually less than
Hmm.
30 feet,
Sure.
just like one device to another device, right? So it might be from your jack to your machine, or from your switch to your router, or whatever, or switch to your patch panel. Any kind of patch cable is 30 feet or shorter, whether it's Cat5, fiber, whatever. So these were the and they're for the most part they're plug and play, right? You just have a bunch of different lengths, and if you need one, you just pull it out the bag, or you grab it out your tool bag and you just plug it in. No big deal. Um, so these were like little patches, short patches that were the only fiber that we were ever exposed to. So if we'd have broken them, it would have been a 5-minute fix. But everybody within my previous section was just like, it was like, don't touch the fiber.
Right.
You'll knock out comms for the whole base if you brush it too hard. I'm like, this seems like really like, why is it
A
just
little
like all over the
excessive.
place? If it's if it's gonna brushing it the wrong way is gonna knock out comms for the whole base. That just doesn't seem like good redundancy there. Um, but yeah, no, like now people are like, get in their fiber, like and shoving it and shutting doors on it and stuff. Not really the same attitude at all. Especially when it comes to like short length patches and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I'm terrified of a fiber that's not tipped though. That is scary to me.
Hmm.
Not a lot of things I'm scared of in this world, but tiny invisible little shards getting into my bloodstream and cutting up my heart, that scares me. Um, so yeah, I've been working there for about a year now. Do a lot of different stuff. And then as of now, working on being ad separated. Well, maybe, probably. So as of September 1st, active duty military members had 90 days to be fully vaccinated. I am not getting vaccinated. Um, you would be surprised by how many people are though. Even people that
Sure.
have no plans of like retention within the Marine Corps. I guess it's because you kind of need it to do much of anything nowadays. Um, I know two civilians that I work with that are currently unvaccinated and have up to this point been very vocal about how they will never be. I don't know if they're gonna stand by that, because like for me,
Sure.
I was already gonna get out within the next 9 months. I'm already virtually unemployable, so it's kind of like it's not the end of the world. Um, for those guys, that's their career. They make a lot of money doing what they do.
Right.
And they have a lifestyle to match the amount of money that they make, right? So it's like you're gonna have a huge lifestyle shift if they have to go get paid half what you could survive on half what they get paid, but not with their lifestyle, not with the house that they own and the cars that they own and all that.
Yep.
So it's like they have their lifestyle tailored to this current income. That's going to go away if they don't get vaccinated. So that'll be interesting. But anyway, I'm not vaccinated. I have submitted for a religious exemption. What I have been informed of is that I have virtually no chance of actually receiving one.
Sure.
And it's one of those things where it's very uncommon, and the Marine Corps basically reserves the right within the Marine Corps orders governing that policy to just kind of be like to withhold your First Amendment rights at any point in time if it is necessary for mission readiness, mission accomplishment, or whatever other reason. So that's basically what they're going to say is like, yeah, nope, this is a mission readiness issue. We cannot accommodate your religious beliefs. So
Sure.
comply or GTFO. And
Yeah.
so yeah, kind of waiting for that all to blow up in my face in a few months here. That about sums it up.
You kind of referenced it a little bit, or you alluded to it rather. But what's kind of, looking back at your full time in the Marines, what impacted your life the most, you think, or rather, what's the biggest change that's been caused by being in the military?
Well, it's hard to know exactly what to attribute to being in the Marine Corps versus just me like aging, right? My Marine Corps experience is from 17 years old to now 20, right? That is like a huge mental developmental phase for anybody. You're going to see anybody in that age range change dramatically. So kind of developing as a person. Now, I think the Marine Corps probably shaped it to a certain extent in certain ways, but I don't know that it's entirely responsible for the change happening in the first place, right? I would say I've developed a certain level of interpersonal like communication skills, things that I didn't have before.
Sure.
And kind of like my my outlook on the world, I guess. My exposure to a large number of people, cultures, belief systems, that the Marine Corps all kind of like vacuums all into one little place, right? Has really kind of been like this, like, okay, now my worldview is a lot bigger than it was, when I, barely ever left my hometown. So, and to be fair, the opposite, not the opposite of, but like my view is really not what you'd expect as a result of that. You'd expect kind of like a, like, oh, I just love all these cultures and I'm a little bit of everything. I'm a little mishmash of this and that and the other. That's really not me. I'm very traditionalist now. I'm very like, this is my heritage and I'm proud of it, and like, this is who I am, kind of along the lines of, this is who my ancestors were, and this is who my parents were, and this is who my grandparents were, and all that stuff. Like, you wouldn't expect that to be the result of that, but it kind of is what it is, because I see people that are really proud of like whatever culture or heritage they're from. It's like, yeah, I'm proud of who I am, like who I am in the essence of like genetically, what those genetic and those cultural things that have been passed down, and also who I am as like where I'm from, like me. I'm from Washington State, but the boonies of Washington State, and the people that surround me, I'm proud of that little mini subculture. So yeah, I guess kind of growing into my personal identity, I guess, which was heavily shaped by my experience in the Marine Corps. And I like guns and I like politics, which was not really a thing before I joined. I joined really like my only exposure to politics being like, everybody thought it was hilarious when Donald Trump was running in 2016, and then everybody being like, well, he's actually like maybe going to win this thing, and then everybody's like, well, he actually won this thing. And then I got like really into politics once I got into the Marine Corps. And like I actually
what do you think it was that driven just by your environment, or the reality that all of a sudden you're in the Marine Corps and this fellow could deploy you? Yeah. Your life depends potentially on this guy's decisions.
I think it was way more environmental. Like, you just see a lot of really political people in the Marine Corps. And I think for a lot of people that are really political, it might be driven by the fact that, like, congressional decisions or presidential decisions, executive decisions, whatever, that guides their whole life, right? That
Sure.
their
Sure.
everything in their world is kind of determined by those people. For a lot of people, though, including myself, it's just those people's investment in politics that drives our investment in politics, and then it's just like, well, everybody else is talking about it, so I might as well, figure out what's going on for myself, and so I became very, very, very political very fast, and to an extreme degree. Like, I am way more political than almost anybody I know, especially in the Marine Corps. A lot of people are like, dude, who really cares? And I'm like, I care. I think it's important.
Right.
Like it's super important to me. Um, and but you'll find the Marine Corps is one of those places where you can have conversations with people that disagree very strongly, but you can still have like a civil conversation about it. Um, you have people that grow up in the heart of the cities versus people that grew up, in the farthest out parts of Texas that can, have a reasonable conversation about something and agree to disagree or potentially change each other's minds. Because the more that you go through difficult things together, the more that you like can't really afford to be divided over dumb things, dumb crap that people can afford to be divided about elsewhere. Like, not
Yeah.
I've had it pretty easy compared to, I'd say, most people, in that, I was on Quantico, I didn't do any field X's. I didn't deploy, like,
Mm-hmm.
but there's still sometimes some really long hours and some really crappy leadership, and that's something that everybody can relate to. It's something
Mm-hmm.
that's everybody's experienced
Yeah.
in the military, and those kind of things to a lesser degree, but they do the same. They draw you together, and it's like you can't afford to really truly draw those divisions. Like, if somebody really is just sucks and is a terrible person, you can hate them, but you're not gonna hate them on the basis of stupid crap that doesn't really affect you in your day to day. So
That's good point.
and
One thing
okay,
I like.
I gotta make a
One.
cultural comment. Sorry, I hate to cut you off. I just gotta throw this out there. That is why we, as a culture in this country, are so divided. We have not had it hard as a nation since 1920. Right? People have had it hard here and there. Some people might have had it hard or not,
Sure.
but we as a nation have not had to come together and be like, our lives all suck, and we got to work through it. Since
Sure.
1920, right? You've had recessions, you've had wars. Nothing has really made the whole country groan and crumble and go, holy cow, like, this just sucks. And it's not anybody's fault. Life just sucks right now. Nobody alive today that has any influence, right? If you experience that and you live through the Great Depression and you remember that, you're 110 years old, and you probably, you're an old person. Nobody really that interacts with anything today has really experienced that, and that's why we're so divided, because we can afford to be divided. We can afford to argue about the stupid little crap. So that's my hot take.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, we've had maybe like instances or moments that seem to bring the country together, but we haven't had like a real nationwide event that lasts more than a few days or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you look at so many people, and again, we're like right after the 20th anniversary of 9/11, right?
Sure. Yeah.
On the radio around you, and people talk about this, you always hear about people talking about, like, listen, in the weeks and days immediately following that, there was this coming together where it didn't matter what you were before. Right now, you're an American, right? And we love our country, and we love the people in this country, and we were mourning, we were angry, and I was pooping in my diaper, so I don't remember any of this, but I hear people talk about it all the time. That was a moment of oneness for this country, but it didn't last. There was one day of awfulness, and then the war was in the Middle East, right? Everything was happening over there. Like, we could argue about whether we should be bombing this place or that place or how we should be fighting the war, but it wasn't personal. It didn't make our lives suck as a nation, right? Some people's lives sucked, but not the nation, right? The nation wasn't struggling. As a nation, if we want to come together, it's only going to be through struggle and hardship.
Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing. I'm thinking. I like that. As a concept. I'm just thinking. Yeah, no, that is a good point. The unity that comes about when a large group of people have to undergo something, or even not even large, just a group of people, like the camaraderie of the military. Like, if you're in a small unit or something, and you all go through an experience, it really unites you.
It doesn't even have to be that horrible.
As a country, we as a country haven't really had that universally. I see your point. So it does lead to increased disagreement and because we're just yammering about nonsense stuff.
We have achieved this point where we don't have to worry about where our next meal is coming from. We don't have to worry
Sure.
about the bear. The bears are all dead, right? There's no more wolves at the door, and the harvest is good and has been good, right? The society has nothing to fight, so we fight ourselves. The 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 Notes of Iron Mountain or something, or the Notes from Under Iron Mountain. I don't remember. There's a really good book about this. It claims to be the notes from like some world leaders that got together and said we have to have conflict every so often to keep the world from tearing itself apart when all they have to fight is each other, right? We as an American society, we have no bears to fight. We have no crops to grow. We're fat and happy and lazy. We have no survival struggle. As a general rule, not to say that there aren't people out there that have to get up and fight every single day just to survive, because some of us are not. There's many people in this country that don't have it easy. But as a general rule, you're gonna look at a place like look at a time, right? Look at a time like the Middle Ages, when you're going to get up every day, you're going to work hard physically for 90% of the population, and regardless of how hard you work to feed your family, a warlord might be passing through, and you all get murdered for your beer stores and the 3 pigs that you own. That was life. Life really sucked. You couldn't afford to disagree with your neighbors over whether they thought that taxes should be flat or income only or graduated.
Sure. Yeah.
You guys needed to help each other out with the grain harvest, and somebody got to watch the pigs, and somebody needs to go fish, and somebody and all your wives need to get together and make blankets together or whatever. That it's like we just need to get to tomorrow, right? We need to have enough food for tomorrow. We need to have roofs over our heads tomorrow. So without that, and it doesn't even have to be that severe. Like, you'll see the effects. Obviously, I've not had it that hard, and I want to stress that. Like, I am not trying to be like, yeah, I've dealt with so much stuff in my life. I'm just a hard guy.
Sure. Yeah.
No, I've had it pretty easy, but even with the limited, okay, sometimes my hours really sucked, and sometimes, our leadership really sucked. Like, it just, as minuscule as that is, you will still see it. Like, us so my unit before had it worse than the average on Quantico, right? Like, most people's lives on Quantico are really, really skate. Ours were not as skate. It kind of sucked on a regular basis. And we got way more lit on the weekends. Like, everybody else just kind of sat in their rooms and played video games. Like, we came together and we were hanging out, we were having a good time.
Yeah, you were buddies.
We were doing stuff together because, like, we needed that release. We needed that together time. So it doesn't even have to be that bad for people to come together. I promise you, if we see like a major economic recession and it not be a political issue, that people would really come together. Just over the fact that, like, hey, we're all poor now. Like, how can we help each other out? Like, so. And I forget, and hopefully you didn't forget what you were saying when I cut you off to throw this whole enormous topic out there.
Yeah, no problem. So one question I like to ask is, if a young kid came up to you and said, hey, I'm thinking about joining the military, what would you tell them? What would you say? What would your advice be, I guess?
Well, everything in my life is hyper political now. I've kind of made that like a part of most conversations. So there's a certain aspect of that where it'd be like, you have to understand that, first of all, your commander-in-chief can change at any point, and you're going to put yourself in a position by joining the Marine Corps especially, but just the military in general, where there are people who can tell you to do something that you absolutely believe is wrong, and to go with your beliefs could get you branded a traitor, right? You have to understand the stakes of putting yourself in that position for 4 years minimum.
Sure.
There's a huge part. I've been encouraging a friend of mine who wants to join the Marine Corps to not, because he has very strong beliefs about certain things, and I'm like, listen, whether your beliefs align with mine or not, and whether your beliefs align with the current administration or whoever's in charge at the moment, doesn't really matter, because that'll change, right? Unless you join right when a new president enters office, then your commander-in-chief will change, right? And it still potentially could, because people get impeached, and
sure,
so you have to understand, like, there's this massive political aspect to your life now that you don't control. And that was a conversation I had to have with myself when I was like, listen, there's things going on in the world right now that I 100% believe are completely wrong, and we are the kind of people that might be called on to enforce it. There was a moment surrounding the whole January 6th Capitol protest riot, whatever you want to call it,
Sure.
where the well, this is actually before that, but Congress was some of the congressional leaders were talking about calling up the other branches to remove the president at the time, Trump, from office. And my
Okay.
aunt, actually, who loves political stuff just as much as I do, she texted me and she was like, "Hey, would there potentially be a situation where Congress calls on the other branches to remove Trump from office, and he says, 'Hey, Marine Corps, do your job and stop that from happening'?
Right.
Could there be an inter-service war?" And I was like, I mean, okay, what are the odds? They're less than 1%, right? They're minuscule that would actually happen. I think
Sure.
I think cooler heads will prevail. Nobody wants a war between the United States armed services, because we know that the Marine Corps would win. Um,
At the crayon drawing contest?
what you draw with your crayons? What are you crazy? Um, No, but it's like, nobody wants that. That's not going to happen. But there is this aspect of where it's like you might, like, what if it did, or what if
Sure.
Trump
Sure.
comes out and makes a statement like, "Hey, Marine Corps, you're going to stop this from happening," and then upper Marine Corps leadership, which at which point it gets very political when you get into upper echelon, says, "No, we're not going to do that." Who are you going with, right?
Sure.
What if one of my staff NCOs is saying, "Hey, boys, go to the armory. We're heading to DC," and the other one's like, "No, sit down. We're not going." Like, I mean, you're gonna have to make a choice, right? And at that point, it's not even like, do I follow orders or do I do what I think is right? It's like, which set of orders do you follow? Like there's a million moral dilemmas that you could put yourself into, and the world is no longer a simple world. Everything is complex, right? Everything has butterfly effect going on, right?
Sure.
Used to be you could do stuff. Well, used to be, not in my lifetime really, but especially before the age of the internet, you could do stuff and it not really have
Back in the
ripple.
before times.
Yeah, back in the ancient times, back in the dates that were BI before iPhone. Um, you could do stuff and it didn't have this massive ripple effect. Now you do anything, like everything you do, especially as somebody like, not to claim I have like this huge influence pool, right? But as a United States Marine, anything that you do, and they emphasize this all the time, anything that you do has like this other side to it where it's like, oh well, this Marine did this. I'm not, some like general or colonel or something like that where it's going to be this massive ordeal if I say something.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly I can say whatever I want to on Facebook and nobody's going to care. Um, so it's like, but there's this other side to it, right? And so
Sure.
anybody
Yeah.
that's considering joining the Marine Corps needs to understand that that is reality now for them if they want to do that, or just the Marine or the military in general. I have this very strong tendency to think of the military as the Marine Corps and then those other weirdos.
Yeah. The rest of them.
Nobody really cares about them. So it's one of those things, like I would say that to them. I'd say, like, listen, everybody else is going to tell you, like, yeah, get in shape, yeah, learn all your general orders and whatever else. I'm going to tell you, this is the reality that's going to hit you when you're in the fleet, that, like, and you look at, and some political issues going on. Just look what's going on right now, right? Vaccine mandates for the troops. I have a serious moral issue with it on multiple levels. So, me, as stupid as it sounds to say, me and the Marine Corps are no longer compatible. I respect their authority to try and demand that of people, but I will not be putting that into my body. End of story. So, it makes every logical sense for them to separate me. And, no hard feelings on my end. Like, I get it. You're doing what you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. I made my choices. So, and I'm willing to live with those consequences. But that's something they should be aware of.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, regardless of which side of that issue you're on, you can recognize that here's two extreme positions.
Yeah.
That are trying to be under the same command structure, and if a kid's going to go in, he should be aware of that.
Absolutely.
The reality of what he's going to be under.
Yeah. I figure everybody else is going to say something like, "Oh, you're going to run a lot. Get ready for life to suck."
Yeah.
I figure I try and throw something else out there that not everybody else said. So.
Sure. Yeah, and that's kind of the part of the deal is that my goal here is just to give a viewpoint that you don't see in the movies or you don't see in the news. Like what's that? What's some random dude or some average guy? What's his experience? What's his day-to-day like?
Yeah.
Not the cool stuff that makes it on the TV screen or something, or on the Facebook or whatever. So
that darn Instabook,
yeah,
Facegram,
yep.
whatever the kids are doing these days.
Yeah. Yeah, well, cool. I mean, hey, that's definitely insightful. Like I say, it's good to get a bunch of different viewpoints, and then you had that unique kind of like techie side that you definitely would not expect from the Marines, if anybody.
Yeah.
You don't think people think of the military as like gun-toting, tank driving people, and there's a lot of support staff.
There's a vast amount of support staff. The Marine Corps has I think the most that are like directly on the ground, boots on the ground kind of people. We have by far the least infrastructure and support personnel, and we're still like 100 to 1. Like
Sure.
you have like 100 plus support personnel for every set of boots that's on the ground. It is unfathomable how many, especially for like I don't think the Air Force really is. The Air Force is like 10,000 to 1 because they got like 100 people in their PJ program, so it's like they got like no boots on the ground. But even for like the Navy, the Army has so much support personnel. Like there's just.
So yeah, do you have any like final thoughts or any like general concepts you want to wrap up with?
Yeah, I would say this has nothing to do with being in the military, but
sure,
go educate yourself outside of the news, right? Everything is political today, right? Everything is news driven. Everything is, he said this, they said that, the Democrats, the Republicans, whoever. Go turn off CNN, turn off Fox News, turn off MSNBC, turn off all of those people, right? OAN, I don't care what side of the aisle they're on, turn them off. Go do the research for yourself. Go read the bill. Go, learn about political bases and, talk to people that are on the other side of the aisle or somewhere in the middle, right? I don't care if you're libertarian, conservative, far left, far right, centrist, and I know people from all these different, political thought bubbles. You will learn something from every single one if you ask them truly, like, hey, where are you coming from? Why do you believe what you believe? You go look at, okay, what do these people truly stand for, right? What is the history of this politician? What have they voted for in the past, right? What are these bills? Like, you can find very, fact-based breakdowns of most of these, really lengthy, language-filled bills that it's like, okay, I don't understand if I read it myself. If I go read somebody who broke it down, right, then I'll understand what the bill is really advocating for. What's going to happen if they pass this bill. Go educate yourself. Break out of the echo chamber where everybody just keeps feeding cycle, because your YouTube recommended, your news recommended, every recommended is just going to be more of what you already saw. So they're never going to break you out of that bubble. You have to go do it intentionally. Go research the other side. Whatever you don't believe, look into it. You'll learn stuff. If nothing else, you'll learn how to argue better, right? And who doesn't love that?
Thank you for listening to this episode of How I Embraced the Suck. If you enjoyed the show, tell a friend. And as my Girl Scout den mother used to say, stay frosty.
Yeah, I'm just gonna make this as hard for you to edit as possible. Maximum difficulty.
I'll just leave it all in.
There you go. I mean, there's not really that much exciting about my Marine Corps. So I guess daughter diaper changes and getting beef jerky are kind of the highlights of this whole episode.